Welcome back to Welsh Miniature Board Gamer. So I thought I'd let you know how well I did for this opening month of my resolution. So January's just about over, and did I manage to stick with my 1 miniature a day painting schedule? Well, yes, I actually did. I managed to surpass that. I've painted 40 miniatures this month, which really has blown me away because usually I'm a very slow painter and I can't get anything like this done. But I think setting myself a goal of 1 miniature a day has actually given me something to aim for. Now, I don't actually think to myself I'm going to paint 1 miniature each day. Obviously, that doesn't work out with drying times and what have you. But I do think, alright, I want to finish 7 miniatures this week. And that works out better for me than saying, oh, well, I need to finish 1 miniature a day, because that doesn't always work out like that. But no, I managed to paint 40 miniatures. There's a bit of a theme going on here, a bit of a sci-fi theme actually. So we'll go down and have a look. I'll give you my quick idea, my thoughts on the miniatures and how I painted them, and then you'll come back to me just for a little closing talk. So the first things I've painted up here are my Orc boys from Games Workshop. I quite like these. These are nice little miniatures there. Well, they're not that little actually. I actually bought them second hand and kind of saved them from eBay. So I stripped them down and repainted them, and I think they're looking pretty darn good. So that's the first 3. There's nothing really to be said about them. Everybody knows what the Games Workshop Orcs look like. So that's the first 3 miniatures. So next up are my 14 Stormtroopers from Star Wars Legion. So yeah, painting black and white seems like a fairly easy task, but obviously people who've done it before know how awful white sometimes is to paint, and to try and get any sort of depth in the miniatures can be quite hard. But I did a fairly quick paint job of these. But I used white, then I painted all the black pieces black, and then null oil everything, and then come back with the white just to pick up, you know, the top raised areas and to remove the null oil from everywhere but the recesses next to the plates, etc. Now, one thing I will say about these models, they come with these horrible seam lines across the top of their domed helmets, so you really need to deal with that before you paint them. So I managed to get rid of them, but it is a bit of a pain when you're painting these miniatures. Another thing is, especially with this dude with the big rifle, he's meant to have vents on the side of his helmet, and he didn't have any in the on the model on that side of the helmet. On this side he has. You might be able to just make them out by there, but on this side he didn't. So you can paint them in if you want to, or you can just leave it as is. Generally speaking, the miniatures are okay. They're not the best quality, but they're pretty good, and they do look like Stormtroopers. So, hot on their trail, we have these 6 Star Wars Rebels from, again, Star Wars Legion. I painted them up with like an Endor colour scheme. I kind of like that idea that these guys would be painting on more of a green toned planet rather than a dusty barren planet. I've used the Wasteland Geek Gaming base cover on them, and I think it works out pretty well. They're quite nice, and it was nice to paint something that's kind of reliving my youth. So over to the 2 fantasy miniatures that I've painted up. The one this side is a Frostgrave Wizards from one of the Frostgrave boxes that you can make the multi-part boxes, and this one's Anther from Zombicide Black Plague. Both of them painted up quite similarly. The idea is that I could use them both in Frostgrave. The base is a sort of a generic grey colour, just so that they'll fit into any sort of game that I decide to play, and aren't really tied into Frostgrave too much, because that's the one trouble maybe with Frostgrave is if you're basing all your miniatures in snowy things, they're kind of tied into then Frostgrave on its own. So these are two Batman the Miniature game miniatures. Obviously the one is Killer Frost and the other one is Grifter. Now I don't play Batman in the miniature game, but I saw these miniatures and I thought, what the hell, I'll have a go. These are probably the most expensive miniatures I've ever bought. They were about £8 each, I think. So yeah, that's quite a lot for me, because usually I don't spend more than, say, about £4 on a single miniature. But I painted them up, and I must say they are nice miniatures to paint. They are they sort of got that sort of Malifaux type proportions to them, and also, as you can see, they're all at these sort of crazy weird angles, jumping, etc. I've already broken his leg once, but I don't think you can actually see where I've had to glue it back together. But I enjoyed painting these miniatures, and yeah, they're good. So here we have some miniatures from Mantic's Star Saga and Dead Zone. So this dude is a conversion that I've used bits of the Enforcer models and a power sword from Games Workshop, and also he's standing on a plague zombie's head. But he's one of the Rebs leaders, I believe, or just a Reb warrior, I think he might actually be. But he's kind of cool. He's one of my first attempts at doing some sort of conversions, and I think he worked out really quite well. I quite like him. He's, you know, he looks pretty cool with his sort of 80s trench coat on and what have you. And the plague zombies here, they're from Star Saga, and I've painted them up so I can use them in Dead Zone mainly. But it's a pretty basic colour scheme with, you know, some reds coming through on their flesh to make them look, you know, pox-ridden. So these two are from, I think it was War Games Factory, maybe? They were the multi-part zombie survivors. And I painted them up either as the same miniature with different loadout for like certain games, or as like twins, you know, sort of the Olaf twins or something, you know, sort of Scandinavian, dyed or very pale hair and trench coats, because of course they're all set in the 80s, you know. But yeah, I kind of like these miniatures actually. They're kind of small compared to other miniatures. Like, so if I bring in a Star Wars Legion, like, miniatures are huge compared to them, but they are bigger scale. But even if you bought in a Dead Zone miniature, he's still quite a bit bigger than the survivors. But it doesn't really matter, I don't think. And they paint up really nice, and I've enjoyed painting them in sort of modern, vibrant colours that clothing would be in, as opposed to, like, you know, muted sort of soldier colours. So next up we have 5 Daleks, which I've painted very much more in the style of the sort of the 80s Daleks that I grew up with, even though the miniatures aren't specifically those 80s style Daleks. These are from a Doctor Who board game, which I can't actually remember what it's called. I can't actually see it on my shelf, otherwise I'll be able to tell you. But it's the game where the Cybermen and the Daleks are fighting. It's from Warlord, I'm thinking. I think that's what's in my head, is Warlord. So I painted them up, as you can see. Some of them have got a little bit of a break because they were my daughter's and she kind of chucked them in a box and they got a bit damaged. So, like this fellow here, he lost his antennae or eyepiece, so he's actually got a pin instead, but it kind of works. He blends in okay, and I quite enjoy painting these. So yeah, that's really what I got painted for this month. So, as you can see, that's what I got done over the month of January, and I'm really pleased with it. And yes, it might not be the best paint jobs, and they might not be, you know, up to many people's standards, but they're up to my standard, and really that's all I can do. I would rather have 40 miniatures on the table that I can play with, rather than 2 miniatures painted to my very best, and, you know, I can't really do much with 2 miniatures, so I'm quite happy at the moment to be painting numbers more than to a quality. Quantity is its own quality, as the saying goes. So that's what I'm done, and hopefully now in February I'll be able to stick to this this regime I've set myself. Certainly this was quite fun and I quite enjoyed doing it, so I don't see there's going to be a problem. So until next time, goodbye from Welsh Miniature Ball Gamer.